Hello, Wizards, and what a crazy, crazy day it's been in the markets, and in particular the past 2 weeks. So, I'm here yet again to provide a very unbiased and level headed perspective as we are now at that point we've been anticipating. It's pretty crazy to see that we are now nearing this level of a potential breakout to the upside. So again, I'm just here to kind of disregard everything that's going on around us in terms of hype, the bullish memes. We have to stay level headed, and I've realized that the goal isn't just to make you all money, it's also to help you preserve your capital. And as you've probably seen on Twitter, just to kind of go over this very quickly as well, I could very easily tweet alt season baby, moon time, etc., for all the retweets and likes, but I don't want to mislead you guys. I want to be a bit more level-headed compared to the majority of people out there. And as covered, it's just about preserving capital. And there was another point I wanted to mention. So there was someone on Twitter, Instagram, sorry, that I reposted as well. And yeah, kind of just covering up many of these topics. So it can feel pretty shitty sitting on the sidelines when the whole market is now throwing a bull party. But this is, of course, why we've been dollar cost averaging since the very beginning. So we profit regardless. So as for margin trades, this is where patience must now be practiced. So the theory behind that is, if you've been following me since the very beginning, we have been dollar cost averaging pretty much since the 20k reversal, and especially as we shifted into 2018. And the reason being is, for any event of a breakout, the long-term portfolio is always thriving, even when the margin trade opportunities may not in particularly be at their absolute prime. So if we actually just go back to the prior video and some of the prior levels we focused on, we can see the weekly candle of the prior week closed at the 78.6 resistance and back below $7,000. Now, the main priority here and the main focus is, of course, this current weekly candle. We can easily look at this daily and see that it's closed above but still below these levels as well. So the weekly can still paint a very big picture, because as you've seen many times before, you've seen pulls, then pullbacks, and then pull higher, and then we've seen a very sharp reversal. So we have to look at this from two sides now, and the reason being is the market is at that point where we are focusing on that prior lower high. If we see the candle closure on a weekly below this level, by all means, all we have to do is be a bit patient, await a quick pullback to potential any of these levels, which we'll be covering very soon, and potentially a very surprise shock. Now, we see this time and time again, guys. I do not care how big this green candle is. Even during a bull run, you will see a very sharp pullback to some extent. So for here and for these points in time, it's about being sensible and looking at the market on a very rational level. Should we see our final confirmation to break beyond this prior lower high and confirm a new high, we can then await a pullback and then enter to continue the bullish momentum. Even when you see these pullbacks here, you can see the likes of $3,000 down to around $2,000. You can see here we go from $5,000 down to $3,000. Up here we go from $8,000 all the way back down to $5,400. You will always see a sharp pullback to some extent. So the reason I'm actually being a bit more level-headed here and not just jumping on these purchases from these regions, and that's because we're at yearly highs right now. It's very easy to look at your portfolio going in the green every morning and continuously buy, but there is no full confirmation just yet until this is broken that we are going to mimic this movement here. So by all means, it's also sensible to not be buying at the highs, knowing that it could very easily just pull back right now, considering the cruciality of the level we're at. So covering both sides of the swords, I am still not convinced, as crazy as it sounds, that there is not more downside to come. I need to see this break higher, and many people are failing to look at this huge upside wick. We can see this many times over, and then it could just slam back down. So be sensible. There's fibs here that I'm not going to factor into play really just yet, but we could very easily see volatility all the way through these regions, but the candle on the weekly could still close below. That is our biggest indicator on what could be occurring. A tap above could still simply be a rejection and a failed break, and then a closure below and a pullback. We have a trend line here that has not been retested since breaking. That could very easily come into play. We have this trend line here also correlating with these other levels. So I'm not necessarily saying short right now, but we are going to break down all of these pairs in particular and kind of evaluate where they currently are. So Ether still fluctuating despite that spike, We're at that weekly 78.6 fib. Now for some reason, I'm not sure why this has cleared all of my levels. Let's see if that will appear there. For some reason, all of my levels have been wiped out. So we will go back to that Kraken chart for now and get that a bit more fixated, and we'll break this down fresh together. as for XRP, if you notice, we're at that 38 cents region right now, which, let me just get rid of that. The 38 cents region we have had marked pretty much since the very beginning of the Wizard Wednesday's analysis. So as you can see, we've actually spiked to that region now as well. I'm not sure why the rest of my analysis has also disappeared, but if you remember this level, this was an initial upside breakout level, 61.8% Fibonacci as well, and we have spiked precisely to that level. But what's really interesting for me is the usual replication of BTC, always mimicking these movements. We can see a precise spike, dead on, I mean absolutely dead on, to the 40 cents region, correlating nicely with this level. So from a longer perspective over here, we have seen this time and time again. And this is why I'm trying to stress the importance of, we have all been caught out on these movements so many times. Even these movements here, we have to look at this just very, very level-headed and just filter out all the noise, await our final confirmations. Reason being, it's very easy to look at these movements and try and just FOMO in and think, oh my God, it's not going to end, but it always seems to end. So I'm just applying some logic here. Once we start breaking above the 40 cents region, by all means, on this weekly time frame as well, focus can be applied, can very easily slam back down and continue. This trend line has pretty much been our gospel since the very beginning. And looking at these levels rejected here, look at this, we could very easily just peak at around 43 cents before plummeting back down again as well. There are many factors to take into consideration, but I wouldn't be surprised to actually begin seeing this spike all the way back down from now, to be honest with you, and over the remainder of the week, which could lead to a potential pullback. We are in that heavy euphoria phase, which is so hard to get out of right now because we're not taking into consideration these levels here. So leaving this here, that perfect precision on the weekly candle was more than enough confirmation this level is valid and it could very easily slam back down. So even daily closures right now for me are not too important because we're still just below. So I think what's wise is to actually just mark this up here around this level here and just take this level into consideration, so we can just focus on this, and then by all means, it's very simple, we can potentially miss out on these profits here, but we know there will be a significant pullback of a few $1,000s regardless before taking off. It's pretty much how the market works every single time. And again, zooming out onto a monthly perspective, it could very easily be the rollover and the pullback again. When you look at the weekly time frame, it's a very unnatural, this sharp V-shaped movement that reversed from the $3,000 region approximately. It's just very unnatural and not normal price behavior. You've seen it before. It does almost mimic these movements here, just on a much larger scale. So final confirmations here, just be safe, just be cautious. Look at that. Let's mark that there. Just needs to close above. That's all we need. We catch a reversal, or if it breaks even higher, a potential retest here, and then we can start catching our longs. But for the time being, there is no way I'm going to be buying at the very high of a yearly high. That's absolute insanity. Daily time frame annihilating these levels, however, we must admit the bullish momentum is insane. But again, the precision on these levels and the candle closures are heavily concerning for me. And it is seeming like a massive bull trap now that we are beginning to form those major breakouts. As you can see here, the breakouts, the retest, the pullback. As long as we can see a breakout to some extent and a confirmation, again, we have this, let's go back to the 30-minute and the 1 hour. Huge rejections, looks like could be some stop hunts in play as well. Just exercising cautious, especially around the $8,400 to $500 region. This is literally our final moment now to take into consideration. But in saying that, yet again, look at the levels on the other particular altcoins. Litecoin still rejecting that 78.6 despite the spikes. We are failing to break that level, and we are still looking at potential downside reversals. Looking at this right now, there is a significant amount of weakness in LTC and Ether in particular, as you can see from the levels they're currently holding. Despite what's happening, these levels have been rejecting very well over time. We've had 3 days in a row of failing to break these levels. So quite crucial to see how this wick can handle as well. But as you can see, breakout, massive slam back down below this level. We're now rejecting this level, and we have 3 hours left on this candle as well. Going over to the 1 hour, it does look like we could be pulling back yet again. So for me right now, it's not really a wise area to be trying to trade. As you can see, there's just so much movement occurring, bouncing back and forth. We shouldn't be risking such movement, but you can see nice Fibonacci setting up as well for potential downside pullbacks. And for all we know, it may just simply clear back to $200 as a retest and fling back higher. It's really not about timing this market right now. It's doing some very crazy things, and I'm not confident in entering until I see a pullback of some sorts. There is no way I am misleading you guys to FOMO in at the highs. I do not care if we wake up in the morning with more profits. That is not how we operate. We are calculated and smart. So we'll break down the Ether chart in a second as well on the Kraken stamp. But again, looking back at XRP as well. So we have this huge fib area in play. Also looking at a potential tap above, which could trick many people into believing that final frontier is coming as well. We just continue seeing these same levels being retested. And realistically, this is why the main indicator for a bit more of a bullish breakout will be we are still trapped within this box. So if I just draw this up to the wicks or even down to the bodies, this is why a nice confirmation and a weekly closure above, by all means, guys, we are back in action. But when you look at this way, until this weekly candle closure happens, we have to remember it is still Tuesday. We have a lot of days left in the week to actually have a lot of manic behavior unfolding. And as I did state in the prior video, the reason being was we could potentially be seeing early in the week a lot of volatility occurring for the candle, and then what could occur from there is a potential pullback as well. So we need to dictate these levels. If they can finally confirm a closure, by all means we're back in action. But the way euphoria currently is at an all-time high, I really would not be surprised to see a very sharp and sad ending to this bullish rally. So we're just taking all facts into consideration here, and for once I am covering all sides of the market because we cannot be taking any unnecessary risks. Again, looking at LTC, it looks more likely than not, unless this level sustains, we are going to see that slam pullback to those Fibonacci levels aligning. Let's have a look at the coin market cap. BTC dominance as well actually peaked at 60% earlier. It's now down a little bit. XRP 20.76% up today. Absolutely phenomenal. But just remember, this has happened many times over, and it's simply bouncing from liquidity zone to liquidity zone. We have surges, we have price suppression, we have surges, we have price suppression. That's how BTC XRP works, and it always works in very similar movements. So look at that, we are just testing that level there, but will it break? We do not know just yet. And the same has been said many times over, as I stated, with that $10,000 region. If they're not clearly broken from the prior highs, we are simply just confirming new movement. So we are having to sit very tight and patient right now, but I do believe there could be a very shocking result to this market. And I know it sounds repetitive, but I'm here to just make sure nobody's doing any crazy forms of FOMO. Once we await a breakout and we catch our recess, by all means, we're back in action. I would even like to see, should we fail to break this level and we begin seeing a pullback, then we can start dictating how the $6,000 level will react potentially, and then we can see if it will reverse from there. But there are a lot of factors showing that price still needs further confirmation because nobody's looking at the monthly or the weekly, which is very, very important to look at. Going over to the 4 hour over here, you can see that rejection already, breaking back below. Going over to the 1 hour, you can see trend lines forming over here as well, potential breakouts coming. $91 is holding magnificently well with a few retests up to 92. But again, just being cautious because a very easy indicator to show you is the amount of wicks and the size of these wicks that have been forming at key levels. It means there will be many attempts to either stop hunt or break higher. So we just need to wait for some confirmation, and simply awaiting a breakout of this specific zone here where all the wicks have amassed would very easily confirm new upside to continue. But with this amount of wicks and this size, it just means we're going to be seeing a lot of this until we get a clear indicator of an upside movement. XRP teasing with that precise 40-cent spike, and we're now just closing back below. Let's go to the daily, just straight back into that same region once again. And this market has never failed us to surprise us with, get that a bit more precise, pulling back already, 61.8, you've got 78.6 above as well. It could just easily slam back down and even close back below there for all we know. So just being a bit more level-headed, guys. Do not try and catch any trades, and if you do, the most optimistic looking, especially with that 4 hour candle closure on XRP, that is screaming a slight downside push to me. Looks like the failed momentum, a little bit of a breach lower. We could be seeing another correction or a pullback to around 34 cents. So just stay logical. Again, when you're at the highs, you should not be buying, you should be selling. And when you're at the lows around here, upon a pullback, you should be buying. So you have a nice potential short opportunity across Ether, across LTC and XRP. As for BTC, with this dominance right now, it's quite scary to see. However, momentum is yet again struggling to break this zone. Now we're finally at that final frontier. 4 hour as well, showing precision on that closure, pullback, nice wick up to there, and a potential slam down as well. I am just trying to cover all aspects here. We have the moving averages here as well on the daily. I'm still not invalidating any of this stuff. As I said early in the week, this could all be a possibility, and it's happening right now. And this could truly be that moment of euphoria. You have to realize the market's now been pumping, in particular since April. So we've had almost a whole month of pump, and now people are finally at that stage. It's always at the peak of the euphoria stage where the bullish headlines come out. Remember, we've had no good news whatsoever until the past 2 days, which has finally aided some momentum. However, the way this market works historically, almost 99% of the time, we see the bullish breakout. The euphoria begins, everybody's screaming it's time to jump on board. The bullish articles begin to come, and it's always once the market dumps, the bullish articles begin to unravel themselves. So we have to look at the market overall, the psychology of the market participants. How are they reacting on social media? Is everyone getting overly excited? Is Reddit going crazy? Are there memes everywhere? Yes, there are. So level-headed at all times. I would much rather we preserve our capital and wait for a better entry or a better confirmation before breaching higher. Because I do feel that those people who are not covering the possibility of this happening could be in for a very nasty shock. And I think it's so important we are embedding into our brains the, I guess you could say, the art and calculations of patience, because we could truly see something revolutionary happening here. So let's be patient and let's see what will be happening over the next few days. But for now, let's just quickly break down the weekly of Ether as well. So getting those key levels plotted back on very quickly. We can see here a key area. Let's just drop that down to the wick. Just breaching above right now as well, 78.6, around $200. Massive psychological level of resistance, which we are currently located at. Again, that trend line really threatening me, and it has been since the beginning of time. It's pulling back already, which is good to see as well. Going over to the next levels to the upside. Again, watching out for that level. We realistically need that broken, as this is not considerably a lower high. So Ether has a little bit of room to this upside here to break this level before confirming. However, when you look at the likes of Ether and the likes of XRP and LTC, you can see more realistically how these things could very easily just fall now, because we are just seeing that stage where the bulls just keep pushing, and they are sucking in everyone into the market. But the dump could very easily be phenomenal, because it's more logical around the current levels of, again, wicks, rejection. Look how many times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 weeks worth of wicks rejections from this same level of psychological resistance. And the same goes for XRP as well. How many times do we surge exactly to these levels? Despite the inverse correlations that have been happening, we have to always take into factor not the color of the candles, but where we are currently located in price action. So let's just brush up this weekly very quick as well. We're now currently located within that zone. There are many zones with Ether right now that it's been fluctuating between, but the key levels are, of course, where the breakout happened here. This is a nice intraday level, which I'll actually adjust a little bit more. Make it slightly gray, just to keep this nice and clear. And then focus on these levels. So rejections galore. Close above there, we are all good. However, let's check the fib that came into play for this movement. I believe nice. So there we have the fib on the weekly. Again, focusing mostly on the weekly right now, as it is important because all eyes are on these weekly candle closures. So what's happening on an intraday level for me right now isn't necessarily too important, because looking at these wicks right here, all of these rejections, the daily, focus on the daily as well, but do not dip down too much to the 4 hour or the 1 hour unless you're looking for an indicator to align with what we're seeing on the weekly and daily. You have to remember, when it comes to bullish momentum, the moment the world starts waking up to jump on board is when the market begins to do the exact opposite. Many people who have missed the boat now, you have to tap into the psychology of the average market investor. And they will be looking at this and they will be jumping on board now, expecting something magnificent. But then, just like we've seen before, it can potentially slam down. upon confirmation of a bullish breakout. Now, when you see the bullish breakout confirmation and then a pullback, that is your opportunity to get on board. Until then, it is just gambling with a 50-50 outcome, which is why in this very rare circumstance, we are having to focus on both sides of the ball. Because very simply, if we all start screaming bullish now, once the whole market has already seen a fairly large green move and we get slammed to the downside, then it doesn't reflect too well on myself, and it will not be a good outcome for any of us. So sensibility, rationality, and logic must always be applied. Literally, guys, let's wait for this confirmation here. We've been covering this for a long time now anyway. If we break above, there is our confirmation. Make sure you follow me on Twitter as well, because I'm constantly updating Twitter with those updates as well. But all these factors taken into consideration, this weekly candle closure is vital, because right now, LTC Ether and XRP are holding these levels crucially. If you look at Ether on that fib, the ABCD, just take into caution $222, as it could be a full spike up from the 78.6 here, tapping this level and potentially pulling back. But again, all of these indicators just point to a potential retest before climbing higher. In the grand scheme of things, the movement here is actually very minuscule to what's been happening. Yes, BTC has been rallying to yearly highs, but then when you look at XRP from a zoomed out perspective, you're just trapped within this box, doing what it does every single time. As for Ether, let's go to the monthly. All you're seeing is a logical retest, potentially right now, of broken support turned resistance where we reversed from last time. All you can see now is the market potentially continuing down from here. So we need our breakout from here. We need our breakout from here. We need our breakout above this level here. If I go to the weekly, breaking out, again, rejections, crucial level. Clear breakout, upside by all means. BTC now at that level as well. Breakout, all indicators would align to bullish momentum. Until then, we are still focusing on potential pullbacks and remaining calm and meditated until this happens. So I hope this is clearing up a different insight into the market for all of you as well, because unfortunately we are only seeing the bullish side right now, but nobody is willing to participate in the potential catastrophic downside. And again, early days of the week, let's see how the week unfolds. For all we know, this may break out by tomorrow or the day after, and then we can easily shift over and anticipate an advance before the weekly candle closes on where price is going next. But for now, let's all remain sensible. If you've been dollar cost averaging since the very beginning, guys, this is why I am trying to really enlighten you on the beauty of holding crypto and also margin trading as well. Because if we start seeing this breakout and you've been copying my principles of dollar cost averaging to the very alleged bottom so far, you would already be in a very significant profit from holding. Anything in between, we are simply trying to identify margin trading opportunities which are presenting themselves right now. Intraday shorts are looking pretty good around this level as well, especially with the likes of Ether, XRP. Very nice, easy pullback to around 34 cents approximately. Let's go to the 4 hour now. 4 hour candle, looking at that right now, that could very easily just recover all of that move down to around 34 cents. LTC with that current rejection, if you want to catch a potential short, just be safe around these volatile regions. It may be best to wait for a slight pullback. Could be looking at an easy 80 cents pulling back to that trend line as well. Remember, I still believe this trend line could be broken in a very shocking event as well, which would lead a catalyst down to a domino effect of the next ladders as well. So I'm still taking every single region into account and remaining very calm until we do so. As for Ether, looking at this level, I'm hoping this can sustain as well. We are seeing that nice pullback, rejection, could be easily focusing on should we see this movement. We've got downside here, retesting prior waters around this level of around 188. If not, you have got a nice trend line there as well to focus on in a potential sharp pullback before it rallies higher. So you can be looking at catching some intraday moves right now if you wish. We have seen multiple rejections off the same zone, looking at a very possible sharp pullback from here. BTC is the only one that's hard for me to really dictate right now, purely because the momentum is not stopping, and it'll be pretty insane to try and short this right now upon this huge bullish momentum, especially at the current regions it's at, because although it looks like it could very easily plummet and reverse, we are still a hugely bullish medium-term movement right now, whereas the others are at a much more logical placement to be catching potential moves. And this is where the inverse correlations could most definitely work in your favor. So pay attention to this, and we should be covering this more throughout the week anyway. And with every movement in the market, I'll be here to either make a video or update you guys in the Telegram. But as wizards, we are calculated, we are patient, and We could potentially be catching a huge bullish upside breakout upon confirmation, or we are going to be catching a huge bearish movement upon further confirmation regardless. So it's a very, very exciting week, and I cannot wait to see how this outcome unfolds.